Hello YouTubers, Alaska Prepper here. I hope you're doing well, ladies and gentlemen. It is a rainy day today, and look at this. This is about the middle of June, right? Look at the temperature outside, 46 degrees, okay? 46 degrees outside in the middle of June. Global warming, hurry up and get here for at least 1 or 2 weeks, okay? 1 or 2 weeks of global warming would be so awesome here in Alaska. But ladies and gentlemen, what we're going to talk about today is we're going to talk about several signs that the end is nearing. And I don't mean the end of the world, but I mean that the things that are causing the problems that we're facing with the economy, with food, geopolitics, all of these things, that these things are coming to a culmination where it's going to mean the end of this paradigm. It's going to mean that it's the end of this turning. However, between now and then, it's not going to be a day before this happens. It's not going to be a month. It's going to be years, and that's why we need to be prepared. And the things that I'm going to cover also will give you a glimpse as to how you can prepare to overcome these difficulties that we will be facing for the several years to come. Now, I know that sometimes this sounds like gloom and doom, ladies and gentlemen, but it's not gloom and doom. This is reality. This is the world that we live in. Be it good, be it bad, it's the world that we live in. And if you want to continue to have a standard of living that you have now, to be able to maintain that standard of living, then you'll have to adjust with the times and adjust with the things that are happening, right? So I love to put these videos out because I like to call them, for any of you that are new, I like to call them actionable intel, because what you're getting here is you're getting a little glimpse of how I see it through my eyes, through the articles that I research, through the things that I see in everyday life, how I see it, and it may be different than the way that you see it. So it may help you see it in a different way that will tell you, hey, I need to get prepared for this or that. You may be prepping already, but maybe there's something you're missing. And I love putting these videos out because actionable intel, ladies and gentlemen, it can only help. It can't really hurt. And I will like to thank Simpure for sponsoring this video and providing everyone that wants to take advantage of an air filtration system for their home a 20% code off of their site of any air filtration system that you want to get on their site. We all know that with the smoke coming into the East Coast, especially of the United States of America from Canada because of the wildfires, it may be difficult to keep that smoke out of your homes, ladies and gentlemen. So if you're in the market for it, only if you're in the market for it, okay? Stay till the end of the video and see the offer that Simpure is putting out. I think it's a great offer, but you can decide for yourselves. 11 signs that our economic problems are accelerating a lot faster than most people were anticipating. And ladies and gentlemen, I went ahead and threw a few more of my own on top of these 11s. So I don't even know what I'm going to go ahead and title this video. So let's take a look at what they have to say here from SHTF Plan as to what are the 11 signs that they see that we are deteriorating economically at a much faster pace than what people are anticipating. And I've stated in the past that when the system blows, that it's not going to blow very slowly. We are in a slow descent right now, but when it finally goes, it's going to be quick. It's going to be like we're rolling down a hill, nice and slow, right? We got the brakes working, all right? So we're rolling down the hill nice and slow, but then we're going to come to a cliff, right? The person that's riding that bicycle down the hill, they're looking at their phone, and they're going nice and slow in a steady fashion, all right? In a controlled manner. But they're not going to see that there's a cliff there. And when they go off the cliff, that's it. It's game over. That's what I believe will happen. But we'll have to wait and see. It doesn't hurt to be prepared, no matter what you believe. So number one, we just learned that foreclosure-related filings were up 14% last month compared to the same period a year ago. So people are foreclosing on their homes. People are turning in their vehicles. Big businesses of huge buildings are turning in their keys to the banks saying, we can't do this anymore. Now what's going to happen, ladies and gentlemen? We have all this real estate sitting there empty. Well, I'm assuming that some draconian states are going to say, hey, instead of having this building open to conduct business, which is what runs an economy, right? Let's go ahead and turn this into A, B, or C with taxpayer money that can't really afford it because businesses have left. But I'll let you fill in that blank. Here they say that as the cost of living in the U.S. continues to climb, foreclosures are also on the rise. May foreclosure-related filings, which include default notices, scheduled auctions, and bank repossessions, were up 7% from April and up 14% from a year ago to 35,196 properties, according to the real estate data group ATTOM. And ladies and gentlemen, I'm sure that those people that are foreclosing on their homes, they're not the people that are in the club. That's why I've always told you, ladies and gentlemen, these pundits, these government pundits, these mainstream media pundits that put out nothing but lies, these people, they're in the club, right? And all of the people that stick up for these people just because of an ideology, these people are going to find themselves in the streets as well. And that's why I've often said it's going to take many years of suffering before the population as a whole comes together and realizes who the real enemy is. Number 2, we are being warned that foreclosure filings are on an upward trajectory, which suggests heightened activity in the months ahead. I don't know why they included that as number 2, but what they're saying here is that on top of the rise that we've seen year over year, that it's going to rise even more. Okay. Number 3, as housing bubbles burst, sales of existing homes are falling all over the nation. That's true. For example, sales of existing homes in central Indiana have now declined for 16 months in a row. And here they say that sales in central Indiana dropped 14.8% in May. The 16th straight month of sales have decreased on a year-over-year basis. And that's the way it's going to continue to be. It seems that now is going to end up being a buyer's market. But I do believe that that's going to depend on what part of the country you're on, because there seems to be an exodus out of certain states and an incoming of refugees, let's call them, right? Of American refugees leaving certain states, going to other states. So I'm sure that the value of properties around the country is going to differ a lot. But definitely in the overall scheme of things, ladies and gentlemen, property values are going to go down, but at the same time, nobody's going to be able to buy. Why is that? Banks aren't giving loans. Banks are being very picky with who they give loans to. Number 4, one recent study found that a whopping 8 million Americans currently live in a household that is behind on paying rent. And that, ladies and gentlemen, let me tell you what, is a very stressful situation for the renter. However, always keep in mind that it is an extremely stressful situation for the landlord as well, especially if it's a private landlord like a mom and pop landlord. I used to be a landlord and I was always very good to my renters, and there came a time where I had some renters that were late almost all the time. I never kicked them out. I was always patient with them. However, I cannot tell you how much stress that puts on you to not know if your renters are going to pay rent and to not know if you're going to have to evict them because they just haven't paid rent in 2 or 3 months. And thank goodness everything worked out with me, at least, but I'm sure that with a lot of people it just doesn't work out. So I said this here a while back. I said that it was going to be like Thomas Jefferson said, and I can't do the quote verbatim, but it went something like this: one day we will wake up in the sidewalks of the streets that we built because the bankers now own it all. And that's what central banking does, ladies and gentlemen. It takes generations. But the purpose of central banking, number 1, to control you, because they can control how much your labor is worth. But number 2, to own everything. They want it all. All right, just take a look at the Fed's balance sheet. Number 5, the most epic commercial real estate crisis in U.S. history has begun, and we are being warned that the 2 massive defaults in San Francisco that recently made headlines all over the world could just be the tip of the iceberg. And of course, ladies and gentlemen, all of these business buildings that are sitting empty and that they're turning over to the bank saying we can't make the payments anymore, people aren't going to work anymore. People were told a couple of years back, or were made to stay home and work from home. And now these businesses, they're like, wait a minute, you mean that I don't have to pay X number of dollars a year to rent these spaces? I can just let them work from home and they're more productive from home? Absolutely, let's go ahead and do that. But then again, it's also that we are, in my opinion, we're already in a recession, right? And in a downturn in the economy, what happens? Businesses go under, right? So we're going to have more businesses continue to go under. We're going to have more people out of work, and we're going to have more of these buildings being turned into the banks in default or foreclosure or whatever you want to call it. But we are in a downhill spiral as far as the economy, and I do believe that the stock market will catch up. All right. Now do your own research, ladies and gentlemen. All right. We're just having our morning coffee together here. Well, my morning electrolyte drink, and talking about the things that are here in the news. But do your own research so you can decide what you want to do for yourself. Right? You have to decide what you want to do for yourself. How can you protect yourself? How can you protect the wealth that you've accrued over the years? You must decide this. Major corporate bankruptcies are happening at the fastest rate that we've seen since 2010. That right there says it all. Look at this. I missed this part here on the number 5. The company behind the hotels. Remember the hotels that they announced on Monday that they were behind. They just stopped paying. It has stopped making payments on its $525 million loan that is due in November for the Hilton San Francisco Union Square and the Park 55 Hotel. You know when they say that if you have a $100,000 loan that it's your problem, but if you have a $1 million loan that it's the bank's problem? Well, this is a $725 million loan. I think this is mainly the bank's problem. Incredible. Initial jobless claims just rose to the highest level in almost 2 years. Every time that they tell you, oh, we added so many jobs to the market this month, usually a month or two later, they revise those numbers down. Right? And then they never really talk about the people that lost jobs during that time. Right? So the numbers, they may look good, but in reality, they're really not that good, ladies and gentlemen. Here it says that initial jobless claims surged last week to 261,000 from 233,000 prior, and well above the 235,000 that was expected, which is the highest since October of 2021. Number 8, according to the Challenger, Gray and Christmas, during the first 5 months of this year, the number of announced job cuts was up. Listen to this, ladies and gentlemen. Was up 315% compared to the same 5 months last year. Did you hear that? 315%. And when you turn on the news and listen to the Fed chair or to the Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen and Fed Chair Jerome Powell, they're always saying, oh, our job market is just great. Our job market is great because last month we added 350,000, let's say, new jobs. But they don't tell you about the 320,000 jobs that were lost. And then they don't tell you that the jobs that were actually added were like service-related jobs. And the jobs that were lost, a lot of them were manufacturing jobs, i.e. good-paying jobs. They don't tell you those parts, ladies and gentlemen. That's why they are liars, because they lie by omission. They leave out the parts that you should really know, and they leave the parts in that makes it look good. Number 9, U.S. manufacturing has now fallen into contraction territory. What do we have a war against here in the United States besides meat? There's a war against meat in pretty much all Western nations, right? And I think you know this. But what else do we have a war against? We have a war against fossil fuel or liquid fuels, right? Some people don't like it when I call it fossil fuels. We have a war against liquid fuels. So what do you think runs an economy? Diesel, oil, natural gas. Ask Germany what runs an economy, and they'll tell you in a hurry. All right, ladies and gentlemen. So of course we have a war on liquid fuels, which is what runs an economy, and now we are surprised. Well, I'm not surprised, but some people are surprised that our economy is not doing very well. Right? It's contradicting. Right? Well, that's the same thing that's going to end up happening here en masse should this continue. Right? So European manufacturing has also dropped into contraction territory. And usually what happens in Europe happens first and then it filters down here. Look at ESG, environmental social governance. Where did they start putting those things out first? That ESG first. They started that across the pond first. A couple years ago. I've been talking about ESG for a while now. All right. And at first people were like, you're just a fearmonger. Well, look, it's happening right now. Right? And then eventually it's already here in the United States. It's already here. You can talk about ESG and hear about ESG everywhere. So same thing, once the EU falls, when they fall here in the United States, you will have, I would say we would be lucky if we had 2 to 3 weeks to prepare. I'm telling you, ladies and gentlemen, once the EU falls, and it will, right? It will. Once it falls and you see this happening, that is That is your, hey, get up, let's go, let's stock up. Oh, I don't care that I have 5 years worth of rice. We need to get more preps. Why? Because everything in your life is about to get extremely expensive. Once that happens, your standard of living will change forever, or at least the standard of living of most people here in the United States of America. Hopefully, those people that are prepared won't be affected as much, but everyone will be affected to a certain extent. And the last one for this article, I still have a couple to cover with you all. It is being reported that the new numbers show that the EU entered a recession in the first quarter of this year. And a recession, ladies and gentlemen, is a lagging indicator, which means what? Which means that they were already in a recession before they announced that they were in a recession. Why? Because a recession, well, the definition, technical definition of a recession is when you've had a negative gross domestic product for 2 quarters in a row, right? Which means that by the second time, by the second quarter that you've been in the negative, you've already been in a recession for the last 6 months. So it's a lagging indicator. It's not a leading indicator. What do you think we are here in the United States? I believe that in the United States, they're going to try to do all that they can possibly do, all right, with the CPI, with the GDP, all that stuff, to keep it above zero, to keep it at 0.001 or higher, right? They'll mess with the numbers as much as they can, just so that they can say, oh, we're not in a recession. But we know that we are in a recession. Take a look at people's pay. I was reading an article, and I don't think that I clipped that one for this video, but I was reading an article, and if I did, I'll go over it real quick. But I was reading this article about a lady that lives, oh goodness, I think it was in Chicago or somewhere in California. Forgive me for not remembering. That makes $19 an hour. And in that article, they were saying how she cannot survive, that she lives in a 1-bedroom apartment with her children, and she is always late on the rent. Always late on the rent. Actually, that might have been here. Let me take a look at this real quick. I'm sorry, ladies and gentlemen, but we're just messing around here, right? Yes, it is here. Look at this. I'll read this for you really quick, all right? Because what this reminds me of is the $15 an hour that we were having protests all over the time. Why isn't anyone having protests for $15 an hour anymore? Why, ladies and gentlemen? Because they got their $15 an hour. That's why. And that's not enough. People are making way more than $15 an hour for doing entry-level work, which were never meant to be work to sustain a family. It was meant to be work to introduce a young person into the workforce so that they can gain skills, in handling customers, in following basic orders. That's what the minimum wage was meant to do. Now, $15 is not even the minimum wage, but people can't even survive on $19-20 an hour. Listen to this. Evelyn Arceo holds down a full-time job as a baker at Universal Studios Hollywood, earning $19 an hour. But even when she gets a few hours of overtime at the theme park, the single mother of 4 can barely afford the rent for her 1-bedroom apartment in Panorama City. On her salary, buying a home is out of the question. But why? I thought that a working wage was $15 an hour, ladies and gentlemen. Yes, I'm being a little hyperbolic because that's what so many people march for so many times. That a living wage, I think I said a working wage, I meant to say a living wage, is $15 an hour. That's what they wanted. Well, now we have someone making $19 an hour who obviously has skilled labor because she's a baker, right? Which takes some skill, who still cannot afford to live. On her salary, buying a home is out of the question, they say. Already her monthly rent is $1,300, and she says it's just too expensive at this point. She also says that with late fees of $40 to $50 compounding her financial plight, she doesn't think that she's ever been on time paying the rent. So, ladies and gentlemen, things aren't going to get any better. Why? Because our salaries will never and were never meant to keep up with inflation. It's never meant to work like that. It is what keeps you, the working person, the working man, the working woman, a person that works for a wage or a salary. It's what keeps you poor. And it's what keeps the people that have assets, right? The people that we all talk about, these rich bankers, these politicians, all of these rich corporations that own assets that don't really take a salary to live on, but they live on the assets that they have and pay much lower taxes. It keeps them wealthy. Why? Because the inflation, that stimulus check that is given to you by the government, is given to them at a much cheaper rate. It costs them a lot less money to borrow when there's quantitative easing, when there's lower interest rates, and it costs you a lot more to live. And let me just show you the headlight of this here article so that you can see what I mean. CPI tumbles to a 2-year low, which is supposed to be a great news, right? CPI, the cost of living, right, is tumbling to a 2-year low. It's what, down to 4 point something, 4.6, I think it says here. Isn't that great that inflation is going down? Ladies and gentlemen, it may be going down, right, with their numbers, but has your cost of living gone down? Has your standard of living gone up? Has it, ladies and gentlemen? No, it hasn't. And let me tell you why. Because they say it right here. Inflation outpaces wages for the 26th straight month. Inflation will always outpace wages. That is why I was screaming from the top of my head years ago when the government says, yes, we're going to give people stimulus. When they locked you down, right? When they locked us down, they made the mom and pop shop stores or businesses close down while leaving the big businesses open, right? And then they started sending out money to pacify the villagers, I guess you can call it, right? To pacify the citizens, to say, hey, everything's going to be all right. Here's your $1,200, whatever it was. Here it is. Everything's going to be all right. And now we are paying for that. Why? Because now our salaries cannot keep up with all of that money creation that was done 2-3 years ago. And it still hasn't shown its face completely. What we are experiencing now is only maybe 40% of the money that was printed going out into the economy. And money is being taken out of the economy. Imagine when that money gets released again, when inflation starts again, when quantitative easing starts again, when something finally breaks and the Fed says, we have to lower interest rates, we have to do QE, we have to go on a buying spree, we have to send more stimulus. Imagine what's going to happen to prices then, because prices haven't come down. The CPI has come down, but has the price of gas really come down? Yeah, it's found a new floor. I don't believe that I will ever see gasoline in Alaska again under $3 a gallon. But just a year and a half, 2 years ago, we were paying what, $1.70, $1.60? I don't think we'll ever see it again under $3 a gallon. If we do, I think it'll be some kind of a miracle or some kind of a reset that was done where they maybe took zeros off of our currency units. Another reason, ladies and gentlemen, why we are ending the year is our debt. Our national debt is at almost $32 billion. But take a look at this real quick. In 2027, it's forecasted that our national debt will be about $43 billion. So by 2030, I'm guessing that our national debt will be close to $50 billion, ladies and gentlemen, by 2030. If we get that far, that is. Well, what people don't realize when they talk about the national debt is that what's the most important thing about the national debt? Is it the actual debt? No, it's not. Because we will never, ever, it's impossible that we ever pay that principal on that debt off. Impossible. The most important thing is the rate of interest that we pay on that debt. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is one of the things that I feel is going to make us get over that cliff. Remember that cliff we were talking about? It's going to make us go over that cliff, right? So just listen to these numbers real quick, and you're going to be amazed at these numbers, because these numbers reflect how much taxes we will be paying, either directly or indirectly. Interest payments on the national debt were $475 billion in FY22, the highest dollar amount ever. All right, we're breaking records for the wrong reasons. Interest costs grew 35% last year and are projected to grow by another 35% in 2023. So that means that 473 is projected to grow by about another 1/3. So let's say add another 150 billion or so to that is going to be 625 billion, all right, interest payments. And it's actually going to be higher than that for 2023. I think they projected it out to be about $800 billion in interest payments this year. But this is what they're saying here. Relative to the size of the economy, interest costs in 2030, right, in 2030 will reach about 3.3% of gross domestic product. What's about 3.3% of gross domestic product? Well, we can see that gross domestic product for, let's see, where is it right here? For the year 2022 was about $26 trillion, okay? That's current dollar GDP, all right? So gross domestic product was $26 trillion. So let's say that by the year, roughly 2030, let's say that is 30 trillion. Well, what's 3.3% of 30 trillion? Just shy of $1 trillion. So in the next 7 years or so, less than 7 years, we're going to be paying about $1 trillion a year just to maintain the loan, not to pay it off, or maintain the debt, not to pay it off, ladies and gentlemen. $1 trillion a year, which down here they say will exceed federal spending on programs like Social Security, Medicare, and even our defense spending. Who do you think is going to be paying those taxes to pay that interest? It is the American people, the cattle that the government uses in order to do their boondoggles and then pay for their way of living. That's who's going to pay, ladies and gentlemen. And you may say, well, they'll just print more money. Well, the thing is that a lot of people don't understand that printing money is a form of taxation, right? Printing money is a form of taxation. And how do you get taxed when they print money? When they print money out of thin air and they introduce it into the economy, that in itself is the definition of inflation. A symptom of inflation is when there's so much money in the economy that prices of things have to go up. Therefore, your salary, your wages will not keep up with the inflated money in the economy. Therefore, bringing down your standard of living, i.e. increasing your cost of living. All right, ladies and gentlemen, this is what we're looking at, right? And this is just one of the things that we're looking at. There's so many other things. And I'll go ahead and finish it off with this real quick. I think I touched on this lightly on a previous video, but Kansas wheat harvest will be the smallest since 1957. But don't worry, ladies and gentlemen, because the stock market is going to all-time highs until it's not. And U.S. corn is being absolutely devastated by drought. I talked about this here on a video, I don't know, a day or two ago, and but I just wanted to bring this back up to you in case you didn't catch that video, which I recommend that you do, because this is going to affect everything. Do you think that corn and wheat are just the corn that you see on your table, an ear of corn that you boiled or that you grilled or whatever? No, corn and wheat, it goes in everything. In everything, which means that the price of everything is going to continue to go up at a time in our nation's history where there's more money in the economy that there's been in I don't know how long. Yes, I do know that the amount of money in the economy is coming down. But ladies and gentlemen, even though the amount of money in the economy is deflating a little bit, has your cost of living gone down? I would say not. I don't see how the cost of living has gone down for anyone. I mean, prices are still the highest that I've ever seen. And you may have a respite in this little area here or this little area here, but it's all going to come back with a fever, right? It's going to shoot up just like a fever when they start printing more money and when they start lowering interest rates. So you have time to get prepared now. I probably made this video about 1.5 million hours long, and for that I apologize, but for that I also am grateful for those of you that are still here. All right, keep watching after this for Simpure's offer. I think Simpure is a really good company. They've taken care of the AP community over the years that I've been doing business with them. And I do recommend their products because I think they're good quality and they are a very good price. All right, so if you're in the market for an air purifier, take a look and at least go and check out their site and see if there's anything in there that interests you in the area of water filtration as well. Having said that, have a great day, ladies and gentlemen. God bless every one of you. God bless America. I'm Alaska Prepper. I'm out. Ladies and gentlemen, you've seen all the pictures of all of the smoke and stuff that's coming into the east coast of the United States of America because of the wildfires that are occurring in Canada. And it has nothing to do with Canada. They're not at fault. Wildfires happen, right? So you have absolutely no control over whether your air quality is going to be affected or not at any time. Well, I've always championed Simpure. Why? Because they make a really good water filtration system. And I also like to champion Simpure because they are very generous with us, the AP community. They've done several giveaways, and that tells a lot to me about the people that are behind the product. Well, Simpure reached out to me with a very generous offer of a 20% off code that you can use on their site. Not only only for water purification things, but also for air purification things. And let me show you a couple of the ones that they have to offer, and at what I think are very reasonable and competitive prices. So in addition to their under the cabinet reverse osmosis systems, whether it be one that has a reserve tank or one that is a direct line to your sink, or the ones that I talked about that I reviewed that is a countertop one, they also have these air filtration systems that go all the way from being able to filter out just a room, if you want to get one that's the size that will filter out just a room, or an entire home. Let me show you what they look like. Here you can see that they have 4 different kinds. The MSA3 Quiet HEPA air purification for larger rooms that range between 600, 800, and 1500 square feet at a very reasonable price of $109.99, ladies and gentlemen. And that's not even counting the 20% off that you get if you use my coupon. The other one here that I see pretty interestingly is the MS18 Smoke Eater HEPA air purifier for smokers. I'm guessing that if it's good enough for smokers, that it will probably be good enough to get smoke out of your home's air. And the one that I'm interested in mainly is the MS600, and the reason being is because it covers such a wide range. The MS600 Smart Air Purifier for extra large room that are up to 2,647 square feet. And you can go to the link that I've left below. You can look at each of these individually if you're in the market for this. I use one in my house. I actually use a medical grade air filtration system in my house because I don't really have ventilation in my house, so it keeps my air in my house clean. But we're talking about $1,000 air filtration system, compared to $100, $200 air filtration system that Simpure has to offer. So again, if you're interested in taking a look at these, go ahead and click on the link below. You can take a look at their water purification solutions as well. I've been working with Simpure now for I think about a year or so, and they've always been very good to the Alaska Prepper community. So whenever they have an offer to make to us, especially when it's going to save you all money, then I always accept it. Why? Because I've learned that they make a very good product at a very reasonable price.